Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining today. Welcome to this insightful executive roundtable on the advertising trends shaping 2024. I am Manonita from Growth Channel AI and will be your host today. Well, here we have a remarkable group of experts in the field of advertising to delve into the dynamic everybody knows here environment. Staging competition requires a keen understanding of the latest trends in advertising. All our distinguished panelists here bring a wealth of experience and expertise. We all will be covering topics ranging from first party data, the move towards a cookieless era, the pivotal role of artificial intelligence, AI, in our content generation and performance campaigns. We will also explore the nuances of omnichannel attribution, the importance of channel diversification as your marketing strategy, and of course, the foundational elements of building strong brands and delivering exceptional customer experiences. Well, as we go through these discussions, we aim to understand the current state of advertising, and also we'll be extracting valuable insights that will guide us in staying ahead of the curve in the future. Well, for me, it is an honor to have with us today Melinda from Distillery, Mihai from Indegene, Vince from Castro Media, Kana from Das Media Creative, Pamela. Well, she'll be joining soon. She's facing a little bit of internet connection and she'll be here with us right away. And Greg, who could not join us today, but yes, we will be happy to have him in the next session. Well, before we start, I invite all the panelists here to give a quick introduction of themselves to everyone here. Over to you, Melinda.
Hi, thanks. So I'm Melinda Williams. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at Dstillery. Dstillery is an AI ad targeting company. So we build custom AI models, custom just for brands to find their best customers. And the product that's getting the most attention right now is a way to target ads without any data about the user at all. So that's something that we call ID-free targeting. And it uses that custom AI to reach people when there's no data on the user.
Right. Thank you, Melinda. Over to you, Mihai.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mihai Milea. I'm the Digital Strategy Manager for Indegene. And Indegene is a consultancy company that deals with very large healthcare clients. The clients that I mostly deal with are AstraZeneca and GSK. And there, I basically provide them with technical solutions for tracking implementation, both for tagging and for CDPs, as well as other types of integrations with APIs and making sure that everything still stays privacy compliant.
Right. Thank you, Mihai. Hey, Vince, please say something about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vince Castro. I'm founder of Castro Media. And my agency specializes in email automation and lead generation within the fintech space.
Awesome. Thank you, Vince. Over to you, Kana.
Hi, I'm Kana LiVolsi. I'm the founder of Mundos Creative. We are a company that is a brand consultancy and creative studio focused on building out brand ecosystems so that companies are not only making something that's beautiful, it actually works and resonates with their customers. We work with Fortune 100 and disruptive funded startups. And I've worked in the space for about 20 years with celebrities, NFL players, and some of the largest brands on the planet. I love telling stories and I love people. So this is exciting.
Thank you, Kana. Thank you, everybody. Let's not wait and delve into the journey together, exploring the changes and innovations in the advertising world. To the audiences here, please feel free to share your questions in the question box. Well, our first question for today is on the cookieless browsing. So, in the current light of cookieless browsing, what should be the marketing strategies of the advertisers?
I'm happy to take that one if you like.
Sure. Yeah.
So, with cookieless browsing, I'm sure everyone is generally aware of what that implies, but it's related to Google's latest set of changes of removing third party trackers. And this brings about a whole level of complications in relation to ad networks and how we advertise. Um, there are several items that Google has made available for us that we can use in exchange of the functionality normally provided by third-party cookies. However, each of these will come with certain limitations. The change itself is related to the privacy sandbox, and the functionalities within the privacy sandbox that can be used are quite a few. Now, in terms of how to actually use them will depend very much on each of our case studies. For example, if you are looking to track users across multiple domains that you own, you have what Google calls related website sets. And this will allow you to keep tracking your customers across all of your various domains. However, in light of this change, you won't be able to use retargeting as you used to in the past. You won't be able to use other types of audiences that rely on the ad network knowing where the user has been before. So interest based, this is no longer something that you can just create on your own. This would need to be pulled through the interests API from Google. And for
Okay.
example, Facebook doesn't have access to that. Google have kindly offered access to it, but obviously there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. And there are many such implications which we are yet to see completely. This is just based off of the information that Google has provided. And currently, only 1% of worldwide users of Chrome have had their third party cookies disabled automatically. The other 99% will be rolled out by the end of Q3. So by that time, we will have a very solid understanding of where we stand with all these changes. And I'm sure that Google will be making some adjustments along the way. Just to give you a very simple example, with related website sets, it's very, very simple to get an approval for websites to be included in that set. I can't believe that Google won't make that process a bit more complicated. Something similar along the lines of the checks you need to do in order to activate your connection between Google Search Console and Google Analytics, for example, where you need to verify your identity and the fact that you own the website. So
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Sorry, me. You had anything?
no, just
Oh,
wrapping things up. Just to wrap things up here, there are all of these changes coming up, and first and foremost, the one thing everyone should be doing is to use the functionality provided by the sandbox, which allows you to test your website to see how it works without third-party cookies. And this is because some of your third parties that you're using might be used for functionality purposes. And once these won't get loaded anymore in the user's browser, you might end up understanding that, for example, your live chat widget stops working. And that is something you will need to plan for to bring it as a first party tracker. Um, Otherwise, we'll just have to wait until Google finishes rolling this out on a larger scale.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think if you take a step back from a purely marketing standpoint, I think the shift from third party to first party cookies just simply gives marketers more of an opportunity to get back to the basics of providing really quality content and interacting with their users to capture them in their own database. So ultimately, before you had the ability to do, lookalike audiences and tap into other people's audiences and cookies. Now it's going to be a shift to, creating the funnels, creating an ebook for download, or having a quality newsletter that people subscribe to, building your own database so that you have access to your customers and not relying on third party or even third party networks to have to access their audiences. So if Facebook or Google makes a shift in their algorithm, you're not as affected as much because you own the database. So I think that's the big lesson for me on this shift is it's going back to providing quality content and interacting with your users on a much more richer scale.
I completely agree with that. And I feel like it really makes partnerships more important. So when you're looking at your users, you're trying to understand them better. You're trying to understand what other products they're buying. You're trying to understand kind of more context around your consumers rather than putting them into a kind of blanket box. I think it also will kind of bring in wider audiences that have been kind of ignored over times and bring in kind of those outside voices as we plan out more intentional branded partnerships and campaigns.
I think that's a really good point. And I think just to add to that, when you think about focusing on content and you think about the delivery of that, that there's no one answer, right? Like Mihai is talking about all these changes that we need to make to accommodate Google. Of course, it's beyond just Google, right? Even today, if you're Google is maybe half of the ecosystem in the US, slightly more outside the US. And so we're losing that addressability, like within that particular world. But I think it's been complicated already in terms of the numbers of solutions that any one marketer has to kind of have their arms around in order to reach the whole pie. And I think that's going to continue where you need to be thinking about how to reach people with new IDs. Think about how to reach people when there are no IDs at all. And then to Vince's point about taking advantage of that first party data and that first party relationship, there's a lot of value in that. And then again, to think about how to connect that to actually not only reaching your audience, but reaching new audiences and reaching new prospects in that way.
Definitely.
Great. So what should be your approach in collecting and leveraging the first party data here, especially in a privacy compliant manner?
Well, I mean, from my standpoint and what my agency does, especially in the fintech world, it's guiding users through different various funnels. It's the beginner stage where there's looking for attention and then gathering interest. So it's creating different pieces of content that are going to interact and engage with users. So if someone's in the beginning stage of just trying to understand what it is that your company does, quality content that they're going to download and find interest and then guide them through various funnels. So along the way, you're collecting data, whether it's, and some companies are doing very good with gamification and surveys and quizzes and polls, but all these things capture people's information and allows you to engage with them in the manner that they want. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do is get as close to the user in where they want to interact with you. And if you can do that properly, then first party cookies should not be that much of a scary idea. It should be more something to embrace.
To add to that, I love that you brought up gamification, Vince, because especially kind of in the phygital brand ecosystem, and I feel like this is a safe place to use the word phygital, because a lot of places are like, what is that word? That's made up. So the physical and the digital experiences that you have for clients, whether that's your experiences, whether it's theme parks, whether it's retail, making sure that you're figuring out a way to, in a way, gamify and incorporate the user into your environment, help engage them so they want to be engaging with you, whether they're in person or online on a regular basis, kind of leaning into their interests and figuring out how you can continue to give them value, and they can in turn bring that back to you. So again, it's all about kind of building a really strong ecosystem across your funnel, and you should be fine.
Exactly. Yeah, building
Yes,
that
thank you.
ecosystem is key. And just in regards to the technical aspects of privacy compliance and first-party data, that part doesn't really change in any way. If your clients are based in Europe or in California, for example, you still have very clear regulation frameworks that tell you how data can be collected. It's just a matter of not being able to collect that third-party data through the normal channels that you used to before. Otherwise, collecting first-party data stays exactly as is.
Yep, exactly.
What about the third-party data? I mean, most of the people will be moving towards the first-party data, right? So how does third-party data gets impacted, especially for the advertisers who are new into the business, who are still yet to get that user base? So where should they start their strategies?
Collecting their own data, I would say. Starting from there, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, no more list rentals, no more blasting 100,000 emails that you never collected. You know, it's like I said, it's just taking marketing back to more of a traditional route and not being as clever with borrowing other people's retargeting lists and putting a bunch of cookies on everyone's website, and just a lot of the shady tactics that I've gotten away with for a long time. I just think it's just bringing it back. And on the technical side that Mihai's talking about, anybody that's in marketing with data, Google Analytics 4 is definitely your friend. That's something that you definitely need to get into and learn, because there's a lot of good data in there that wasn't around before and will impact first party cookies for sure in terms of understanding your user base. So definitely something worth investing your time with.
And with consent mode, you can also get at least some partial data from users that don't provide consent. Of course, that data won't be as rich and as useful as for those users that do provide consent. However, you are still gathering some extra information that you can use as a basis to get a better understanding for those users for whom you can't actually collect that data for. So it's still something extra that wasn't available in the past. And it's actually very useful that Google are also adding in this consent mode feature on top of the new privacy sandbox that they've introduced.
This may be jumping ahead a bit, but I feel like this is a good time to bring up the sort of ever-present topic of AI these days. When we're talking about like, what are we going to do without having the data we need is kind of like the question that we're talking about right now. How are we going to get that data? And I think this is a place where AI can fill that hole. But what I think is important to understand is that I think usually when maybe the gut reaction to think about how is AI going to solve that problem is you think about AI knowing more and like more data about more specific individuals and tracking more and figuring out exactly what a person is doing. But I think in this new era of a privacy-friendly targeting, there's a flip side to it where instead of trying to figure out more about that exact person, you can use AI to sort of figure out everything around them so that you don't need to know about them in particular. And so in the example of like, well, what if I don't have first-party data? Well, so you can look at other data sources that are, separate from the ad ecosystem, opt-in panels, understand how people use the internet, what people are searching lately on Google and what other behavior that's tied to, so that kind of thing, just to understand broadly behavior. And then use AI to kind of build up a foundation of knowledge so that now if you see someone at a particular website, without knowing anything about that person, you know that that's associated, that behavior of visiting that website maybe at this time of day is associated with a search term that's currently trending and super relevant to your specific product. So now you're using AI in a way that's, you know, kind of the opposite of creepy, because you're using it to figure out everything except for that detailed information about the person themselves.
I think that's a really great
absolutely.
point. Oh, good.
Go for it, Kana.
I feel like that's a really great point, Melinda. And I think that's also a great point to bring up the hosts of this panel, growth panel, just because one of the things that we've actually used it for is when there's new brands launching that say, like we had a brand that we were talking to out of Brazil. That's a massive brand there, but they were trying to figure out how to attack their US target audience. And so they were looking at Macy's is one of their partnerships where they wanted to launch all of their product as kind of a first place to go. So instead of being able to track the users of there were shoes. So the people who had the shoes in Brazil, we were able to look at Macy's and their shoe department and figure out kind of the actions of the users there with that and around other similar products to be able to create a more targeted strategy for their US entry. So while we didn't have that first party data, we had enough data around the potential consumer market that we were able to create a really solid campaign plan. So that's one way that you can use it. I think is really
absolutely.
exciting.
Getting external data to enrich your existing data and the information that you do have available. That's a very solid approach. And one other approach that I would strongly advise, it's not really along the same lines of going around the user, but it's about trying to convince your users to provide you consent and at the same time sign up with you. Because once you sign up, this is when you'll have all the information you need from that user, and you will be able to use that information across your entire ecosystem of websites, your entire technical ecosystem. You'll be able to use all the tools you have available in your arsenal. And to top things off, you'll also have a very good understanding of what cross-website and cross-device activity looks like. I've seen more and more, particularly travel websites, that generally rely quite a bit on third-party data, trying to convince users to sign up for an account, giving them some small vouchers, some sort of an incentive. Because once they do that, they will automatically become first-party data, and they will be able to track those users in the most accurate way possible.
Okay. So, like, how much can we use AI here? Like, we are using AI to get in the data of the users. And how much AI can we use in terms of, like, the messaging that we provide to them, the process, like the sign-up process and everything? Where all can we use AI now?
Well, from my standpoint, especially on the email automation side, one of the cool ways, I mean, obviously people are using AI to create content, and there's arguments to both sides, whether that it can create as quality content without human interaction or human overseeing. But on the predictive side, AI is very strong. And so one of the things that we've used it for a lot on email is putting all of the user data into an engine for GPT to analyze and basically try to predict points where someone needs to be reached out through email. So for example, in the Forex world, you have live traders that are trading, and at some point the lifetime of that trader stops, whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 50 weeks, whatever. But if you can use AI to try to predict certain actions that they take, like a large loss, and all of a sudden, typically a user stops trading at this point or stops using this broker, you can then start to predict when to reach out to them, because it is first party data. You have their email, You know the actions that they've taken. Now, if you can use AI to notify and say an email needs to go out to this person, they're probably going to stop trading at this point. Offer them an incentive, offer them some sort of education, whatever it is. But I found that has been much a really good use for it, where it's very difficult to just have someone on the team constantly crunching data. So for me, on the predictive side, has been really cool.
Yeah, one important
Yes,
item
thank you.
related to AI, I would say, is the data quality that you train your AI on. Um, AIs, if you expect them to give you correct predictions, they need to be trained on correct data. If you're not collecting quality data, then it's gonna be that same old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
So before you implement AI, make sure that your data collection is as correct as possible.
Right.
I think this.
What about?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure, continue.
I was just going to say that this is also kind of where creative direction comes into play. It's being able to delegate properly and be able to understand audiences and then psychology in a way where you can actually train the AI to move in the direction that actually converts users. So I think we're again really having to understand people a lot more than we did in the past, rather than just kind of patterns that might have happened, not necessarily due to buyer intent or the way that would most appeal to users. Because I mean, I think what's the stat, like 91% of women feel like advertisers don't understand them in this day and age. Like now we can start to understand those, again, outside voices and people who haven't been heard so much in advertising, and start targeting them in a way where they really start to engage because they feel seen. So I think there's a huge opportunity to kind of move in a better direction and make more money for advertisers if they use this well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
yes.
Sorry, go for it.
So I just wanted to ask, any other nuances that we need to keep a check of while we are using AI? Because right now I think AI is everywhere. People are talking about it. People want to use it like wherever possible, just to automate their process, to reduce their time. But any of the nuances that we need to take care of as a marketer or as an advertiser?
In terms,
I mean, there's a lot.
yeah, it's quite a general question indeed. From my perspective, it's always best to go on actual examples. But as a general thought, you should use AI wherever it makes sense to do so. Don't just buy into the hype of AI. Look at your own company processes, see which tasks should be automated. If those tasks can't be automated in a classic way where you have full control over how the data should be sorted and controlled, then obviously it's perfectly fine to use AI for situations like the one that Vince mentioned. That's a very solid case to use an AI. And yeah, just basically use it whenever you can and wherever it makes sense to do so.
Yeah, I found with AI, I mean, using it for planning and for research has been really beneficial, especially when you have a small team. So, you know, if you're looking to make to do keyword research or do a content strategy for an entire month, it can pump out 50, 100 ideas with a very specific target that you've given it as a prompt. And then from there, if you need to know what you're talking about to weed it down to then create quality content. But it's a good starting point to give you ideas, especially if you've run out of ideas or you're having a day where you're just not really being that creative. It can really help give you a boost, but you still need to know what you're talking about. AI is not going to create content if you're not already a thought leader or experienced in the topic. So yeah, it's got to be used carefully.
Hi guys. So I want to jump in here, and I'm glad I finally made it. So I have recently tested AI in terms of creating presentations. So Google has Plus AI, right? And I was like, hey, give me a presentation that tells me how to set up a Google Ads campaign, right? And while I have to say that the presentation was really good and it was quickly done, the steps were really generic. So it was what you see online, but at like in a typical Udemy course, but then like at step 1.2, you'd be like, okay, so what do I actually do? So there were like screenshots missing, the actual step, updated information, updated wording, right? So that goes to show that yes, it can enhance your work. But again, also as you said, Vince, you gotta know what you're doing.
Exactly.
100%.
Well, there was something really interesting that I saw, I think, yesterday, where AI has been used in to help with TurboTax and HR Block, but it's been giving false information. So you can't just let AI run rampant. And I mean, that is
Yeah.
probably the worst case scenario for having false information when you're filing
Yeah.
your taxes. But AI, again, like it has no taste. So I saw this great example where they had a bartender come up with a drink for somebody based on their what they wanted, and then they had AI come up with a drink, and the bartender made both. And it was so apparent, like when the woman drank the AI drink, she just like spat it out because AI doesn't know what things taste like. It doesn't know texture and like human experience, right? So we think about it the same way when using it for drafting campaigns. We think about it like interns or early stage professionals or even mid-stage professionals, where you're basically drafting things out and building context and like teaching it, and it's a learning experience where we get the first draft done, right? But you need to do so much work after that from like an experienced professional perspective. So
Yeah.
that's really the only way to use AI at the moment for creating content. You can't just push it out there and say, oh, this is great. Also, there's copyright issues, right? So we have to be very careful to be using it as a brainstorming tool, not as a actual content creator.
That's such a good
Absolutely.
example of what AI is terrible at right now.
Right?
I think where we found use with it is things like, like understanding language. It's good at that. And so what we've been able to do is just to plug it into our audience catalog. So, we have a tool where you can put in your brief and it searches our catalog. And because it's limited to our catalog, it's going to find something that's actually connected. But I think the most exciting, I mean, these things that kind of save you time and skip steps is exciting. But I think what's even more exciting is uses where it enables something that was literally not possible before, that humans would never be able to do. And so, and that's cases like, more to your point, Vince, about predicting this, what is the exact value of this impression to my campaign right now? Like, what should I pay for this impression? And like, what should I pay for?
Yeah.
Like really stuff like that no amount of human time is going to get you like that amount of prediction, just because it requires so much data. It requires like looking at millions of journeys and compiling them all together and understanding what all those websites mean. So that's where we've seen it unlock the most value.
Yeah, definitely. I've been experimenting with real-time bidding and stuff with AdWords, and using, Google's now starting to release AI tools within AdWords to exactly what you said, budget optimization, trying to calculate how much should you bid and letting it just run wild and see. And we've experimented with just seeing what happens if we don't actually interfere and just let it run. And it's been pretty good. So yeah, I think that is going to be the future, where if the larger the amounts of data it can crunch, I think the more accurate it's going to be. So yeah, no, it's cool.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, everybody. Let's talk about another topic that's has been across most of the advertisers, and that's about the many emerging channels that's coming up, and how do we rightly attribute to those channels. So, what are your takes on that?
Yeah, channel attribution. That's always been a difficult thing to prove, hasn't it?
Yep.
And with Google Analytics kind of constantly trying to push more weight onto the influence of Google Ads over conversion, that doesn't make things easier at all. Um, I'm actually working on a product that for a client. It's a custom product, which will essentially allow the client to create their own data model. Of course, my team and I will be handling the coding for it, but the client will actually set out the rules of attribution, and the weight that is given to each event. So in the end of the day, in a journey, you have multiple events. And those events, it's really up to each company and each industry to understand how valuable those interactions are. Then it's just a matter of coding this and making sure you are collecting the data correctly. Then once you put it all into a database and you start running your data model, you should be able to understand clearly which attribution channel should be attributed how much revenue. So that is the connection that I believe will provide solid clarity, which is independent and under the control of the client, not of the vendor.
Yeah, it's as you said, it is a very complicated topic that's always been around, and on a slightly different area, one of the things that we talk about is dark social, which is basically all the different touch points that are not really digitally attributable. So, for example, somebody hears your brand mentioned on a podcast, or they've watched the LinkedIn post by your CEO, but they don't interact with it. So, how do you attribute the value of these types of interactions, which all do have a cost, but you don't directly say, for example, somebody hears your brand mentioned on a podcast, they're going to probably do a Google search and maybe and sign up for an account, and all of a sudden now your attribution says that this person came in through Google, so your SEO value goes up internally in marketing. Meanwhile, that's not the case. So I mean, it's always something that we're trying to challenge. In some cases, on a very basic scale, for most marketing departments to do, is I always like to say that when someone is signing up for any sort of interaction on your company, is to simply have a open text box that says, "How did you hear about us? Why did you open an account today?" And you'd be amazed some of the answers that you get. You do not get, "I came in through a Google ad," or "I saw you on YouTube." It usually is quite an interesting interaction where they heard about it, or referral from a friend, or so. It's attribution is definitely a challenge, and then obviously with first party, it should become over time more effective, because you'll be able to track all the different interactions, and there'll be more tools that allow you to, like what you're probably working on, Mihai. But yeah, it's an interesting topic.
You made a very good point about just getting customer feedback. That is
Yeah,
actually perfect.
yeah,
If you do get clients to fill that in, that is solid.
yeah,
But yeah, in many cases that won't really be possible. However, for these dark media interactions that you mentioned, for example, if someone mentions your brand in a podcast, here you can sort of figure out what the result of that session was, as long as you know when that brand mention was done. So
yeah,
you know how long
yeah.
the session is. So more or less 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after. It's within that time span. You can create your data model to take that into account. So
Correct.
these
Yeah,
items, as long as you're aware of them, obviously, if you're not aware of the fact that your brand was mentioned on the Joe Rogan show, um, then you'll never know
Mm.
why all of a sudden you have 100,000 people searching for your brand. However, if it's paid advertising, assuming that you pay someone to mention your brand in a podcast, and you know exactly when that happened,
Yeah.
then you can model it.
Yeah, paid for sure. Organic is a little bit more tricky, for sure.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yes, thank you on that. I think we're close to the end of the session, but I have an important area that we need to discuss. Like, I mean, we talked about so many innovations, technologies, AI, but let's not forget the brand fundamentals, right? How do you guys think the impact of brand building initiatives impact the customer experience?
I mean, from my standpoint, it's everything. I mean, it takes us back to the beginning of our conversation with first party. Your brand is who is the emotion of the customer, of how they think of you when they think of your brand. So the stories that you tell, the content you create, the channels that you interact with them on, they're all part of your brand story. So you can never lose sight of that. No matter what new tactics that you try, everything needs to be part of a strategy that keeps your brand on true north. So yeah, it's definitely, it's a massive play.
Yes. And so basically, like, I think this will be the final question for the evening. So, how does AI come here? Like, do you think AI will be able to ensure the brand messaging, the brand intact for the customers?
I mean, from my standpoint, it can contribute, but again, heavily monitored. I think that AI, you can teach AI to have a similar tone of voice than the content you put out. I mean, there's plenty of tools that have already shown that, where it can analyze all of your LinkedIn posts, and then it can produce LinkedIn posts that are the exact same tone. So yes, AI can be a tool, but there's no way that AI is going to replace your marketing department creating brand content. It's just that there's no way that I don't see that anytime soon.
Yes. Thank you, Vince. Pamela, I think you're here. So, anything to add to that?
I think the one point that might have not yet been mentioned that I keep coming across is that in order to really leverage that AI, you need a lot of data, like lots of data. And most small businesses that just get started with ads, for example, Google ads, Meta ads, and so on, with a 10, $20 a day budget, you're not going to get that data. And with that, it means you're not going to be able to leverage these ads effectively, right? So while, for example, Google ads was made for everybody, it's not anymore for everybody. You got to have a substantial budget for it in order for it to work, right? And so I really want to encourage people to first think about, do I have the capacity to actually gather the data that I need, or would it be better right now for my business to focus on something else?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a very good point. You can't take a small scale and put it through AI and try to see if you can get quality data out of it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and so I mean, also from like an academic perspective, the one guidance of a number I always give our clients is you want to have at least, for example, for ads, like 3,000 impressions or like at least 30 conversions. Anything with 30, with 3, a multiple of 3 is a statistically relevant number. So you got to see that you get to that. And across the journey that you take with ads, these might differ a little bit according to whatever metrics you're optimizing for. But that's kind of like a good measurement to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think one way to deal with that constraint is to try and think of ways that AI that has learned from a lot of other data outside of maybe your own campaigns data, ways you can bring that to bear on what you're doing. So in the case of like AI that's kind of learned about like what, through other website journeys unrelated to like your own campaigns, to learn which moments maybe are the most relevant for your specific campaign. It's a little bit different than optimizing, then maybe once you have that 30, 300, 3,000 conversions, then you can start optimizing in a different way. But I think that if you can come up with ways for AI solutions to give you a head start by bringing other data to bear on your problem.
Well, thank you, everybody. Before we close down this discussion, what is the final advice that each of you would like to give to the audience here that they should definitely implement in their marketing tactics for this year? So it's like one line of advice that you'd give us.
Well, I think one thing from my standpoint, to be on topic with what we're talking about today, I think that any small business or any marketing department that has not started to research and experiment with AI, even just ChatGPT or other tools that could help, I think that is a no-brainer. I think the only way that you're going to get good at using AI and finding out how it can help your existing business activities is to experiment with it almost on a daily basis. You don't get good at prompt engineering just by putting in a few prompts one day in ChatGPT. It takes time, and then you realize, okay, actually this was really good. So for me, that's that. In terms of just standard marketing tactics, I think the shift of first-party cookies, I think it's going back to the basics of what content are we creating, how are we adding value to our customers, and where are they consuming this content, and we need to be there, because you no longer have the luxury of just piggybacking on other people's lists or other people's cookies in order to get traction. So it's having purpose with the content you're creating and knowing where you want to create and put it.
On my end, I'd say on my end, I'd say that it's important to make sure that the data you collect is the right one. As long as you can trust that data, then it's possible for you to do whatever you need. And of course, you can train your AI models correctly. Otherwise, AI is not going to bring about anything positive in your life.
Nothing?
That's dark.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think to the point, like we've been talking about, thinking about, your brand fundamentals and what's going to bring value to your brand. So I think as we go through all these shifts where your targeting gets less addressable, like, cookies are going away, you are kind of losing channels for how to deliver your message. I think it's important to remember your brand goals, like you're trying to drive brand growth. Because sometimes when you get kind of stuck doing the old way, as it narrows down, then that KPI may look fine, but the KPIs kind of all break. So you kind of need to step back and think about what are the actual goals. And I think that's going to involve bringing in like new approaches and kind of thinking about a full spectrum of approaches, on all of these fronts, whether it's about content or about delivery and targeting.
Right. Thank you, Melinda. Over to you, Pamela.
I think for us, one aspect that I want to bring in is audio ads, which are currently having about 12% a year growth. And that's a big focus for our clients, especially for brand awareness. And I really want to encourage everybody to discover the opportunities within Google Ads. Most people don't know that you can create audio ads within Google Ads, to create them on Growth Channel, of course, right? There's a multitude of ways how you can leverage them for your brand. It's a growing medium. It's still very cheap in comparison with a lot of other channels because not yet a lot of people are leveraging it. So yeah, go audio ads.
Well, thank you all. I think we have a few questions from the group here. One question is, of course, on how do we leverage the omni-channel marketing strategy for a niche targeting user base?
Sorry, what was the question?
How do we leverage omni-channel marketing strategy for a niche targeting user base?
For a niche targeting user base.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it being niche is much of a difference. I mean, my attitude is that when it comes to omni-channel, and you're going to use and interact with the channels that you feel are where your customers belong. You know, if you don't think that any of your customers, say for example, are on TikTok, then there's no point having a TikTok strategy as far as I'm concerned. So if you're niche, then you should definitely be able to know where your niche customers are interacting, are consuming content, the type of content, what are their pain points. So you should be able to profile even better where you should be spending your activities, especially if you're a small and medium-sized business. If you're not Coke and you're trying to be on everywhere, then yeah, do the research, understand where your customer profile is, where they're interacting, and have a strategy for those, and an individual strategy for each channel.
Yes. Right. I think there is one more question here. So this is basically for all the small and medium-sized businesses. So what are the marketing tactics that they should adapt to, especially in the cookieless advertising environment?
So that just goes along the same lines as what we were talking about earlier. Try to switch over to first-party data as much as you can. Try to get user IDs. Try to get users to register to your business,
Exactly.
and constantly look for where your customers are. I think Vince's point was really solid on that. If you're dealing particularly and generally most small companies, they deal with niches. If you know where your customers are, just make sure you're there and you're presenting yourself in the way that you want to be perceived by your clients. And that should have you well covered with or without cookies. There are, of course, those limitations like remarketing, creating all sorts of third-party audiences that you're not able to do anymore. But those are just a part of things, and even those ones, you'll still be able to sort them out if you have first-party data.
Yep.
I think one of the things that kind of goes along with that, and I apologize, I was kicked off and I don't know what happened and couldn't get back on for a bit. But I think one of the things that like everybody's kind of touching on here is that you really need to be building trust with that consumer. So making sure that you are building a strong brand, making sure that you are showing up to even things like this, where it's like you're talking with other people in your industry and showing that you are a part of the industry and can be held accountable is very important. Being consistent across your brand and your experience. So even though you are using AI, and you probably are using it a lot more even as a small and medium-sized business to try and kind of flesh out your funnels, making sure that you have somebody who is moderating that and making sure that it actually represents you and represents what you want to the consumer, because your reputation is really everything in this new world, right? So making sure that you present very strongly as you move forward, and you'll be able to grow a little bit faster.
Awesome. Well, I think we're close to the time. Thank you so much for all the insightful discussion, and of course there were quite a bit of keyways that we have actually taken today. So yes, a wonderful discussion today. Well, to our audiences, please thank you for joining us, and in case you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we will address all the queries as possible. And well, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for joining us and making this time a memorable one with a lot of learnings. Well, thank you, everybody. Stay safe and stay inspired.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Thank
Pleasure.
you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you,
you.
Manonita.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye.